Hi everyone. Yeah, and thank you for joining us. Actually, it's the second webinar we record. Today we have the pleasure to host great guests representing Sylius and Magento. First things first, thank you for basically attending to the new date, and sorry for rescheduling the previous one. Although we felt like it didn't make much sense due to the to this current situation with Ukraine to host the webinar when the war started. So we felt like it's going to be a better idea to left some social media space for others to basically announce important things. But somehow we feel like now people are actually desperate to at least try to free their head and start thinking about work and things that they are used to. So today we are not going to be very political, and we are going to talk about comparing two awesome e-commerce platforms. So my name is Mikołaj Kroll. I've been in e-commerce technology for the most part of the past decade, and as a web developer, then as a consultant, and now I'm owning a 60 people company agency actually, which works on tailor-made e-commerce experiences for customers all over the world. And today I have a great pleasure to host Paweł Jędrzejewski and Alessandro Rossi, representing Sylius and Magento. And the purpose of today's webinar is to talk objectively about comparing two platforms that are gathering more and more popularity among the world. Because somehow, especially that disadvantages part is the part that most B2B marketers and sales representatives skip. And today I would like to basically ask a bunch of questions, maybe even some uncomfortable questions to both of you, to basically have an objective comparison between those two platforms. So let's start with the introduction. So guys, can you tell us more about who you are, what you do for a living, and how do you represent each of the previously mentioned vendors? Maybe starting with Alessandro.
Okay, so because I'm the older, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
we can say so.
I'm an old Italian guy, long time Magento community member. I've been Magento maintainer for 4 years. Lately, more involved with other community initiatives like Magento Association and Magento Open Source Community Alliance, which is a group of people that join forces to preserve the value of the open source version of Magento. And as a joke, I usually say that in my free time, I work as team leader and mentor in a Bitpool. Of course, it's a joke. It's my full-time job. And we are a small agency, 20 people more or less, and we do e-commerce. We mostly do e-commerce in Magento.
Okay, thank you.
That's it.
Hey, first of all, thanks for having us and inviting us, Mikołaj. I'm Paweł. I was born in Poland, and somewhere in high school, I started an open source project, being quite heavily inspired by Symfony, by PrestaShop and Magento. I was making my way into the world of object-oriented programming as a developer, and two of my close relatives were starting a small business selling cosmetics, and this is when was my first attempt at building an e-commerce project. I decided to open source it, and it started. It evolved into a business community and a whole ecosystem now of e-commerce merchants, enthusiasts, and so on. And my current focus is now mostly around the vision for the product for version 1, 2, and 3. We got this far in terms of discussing what's next, and building also the the legal and financial vehicle for Sylius. So basically working on the company and our management system and so on. So Yeah, and I'm very glad to be here and connect in a friendly way with Magento ecosystem, which continues to be an inspiration for us. So
perfect. Okay, so sticking with Pavel, if I may ask you, if you had to describe Sylius, especially Sylius Plus, with one sentence, what would it be?
I I wrote it down just to be sure. I would say it's headless e-commerce framework for mid-market and enterprise.
Yeah,
I know if you want to ask to expand on this or just.
Yeah, you can expand it. Why so?
Yeah, so headless because going towards version 2, the APIs become like the first class, citizen of the Sylius stack. So most of the projects that are started now are choosing headless implementation strategy, so separate front end, separate backend. E-commerce for obvious reasons. Framework because we definitely focus more on providing a foundation to work on top of rather than a complete, all-in-one solution. And yeah, mid-market and enterprise because we clearly see that this is where Sylius shines basically in these two spaces. Obviously, there is much more detail and depth to it. What do we mean by mid-market and enterprise? But I expect we discuss this.
Yeah, obviously. So we'll get into more details probably in the next question. So Alessandro, now's your time.
Yeah,
same question.
I will use a claim from the past, which is no more used, but for me, it's still relevant these days. The Magento is a flexible open source e-commerce platform for growth. So it's flexible because it's based on a flexible open source framework. It's a platform because there is an entire ecosystem dating back to 2007, made of services, agencies, freelancers. We will see it later. And it's for growth. It's intended for merchants that aim at growing their business. So starting maybe small, not too small, in my opinion, we will see, and growing big.
Okay, yeah.
A lot of details will come during this webinar.
Obviously, I feel like we can keep in mind this framework and platform comparison because this is actually going to be quite relevant to the later comparison. So Alessandro, sticking with you, because today I would also like to talk a bit about the commercial version of each vendor. So could you please describe what are the differences between Magento Community Edition and so-called now Adobe Commerce powered by Magento?
Well, we can consider Magento Open Source as the core open source foundation of Adobe Commerce, which is a commercial licensed platform, which basically add a lot of enterprise level functionality. So features like advanced CMS, advanced B2B features, loyalty, marketing, search, analytics, reports. So basically a lot of additional functionality plus official Adobe support. And we will talk a little bit about support later because it's very important to distinguish between the Magento Open Source, the Community Edition, let's say so, and the Adobe Commerce, the enterprise platform.
Okay, perfect. So Pavel, the same question for you. What's the difference between Sylius and Sylius Plus? This is the name of your commercial product.
Sure. So in straight technical terms, Sylius Plus is built on top of the core edition, the open source edition, in a similar fashion. It's a plugin essentially that comes with a couple of extra features. So essentially, our pricing strategy for the entire company is like give everything that people need to use Sylius for free and charge for premium services, premium functionality that's not essential, but basically adds value on top. So we have multi-source inventory, we have loyalty features, returns management, more advanced and granular permissions. We have partial shipment. We have features for companies who deal with multiple departments or business units, essentially where you want to, let's say, restrict access to some of the employees only to specific channels or product categories and so on. So that's in terms of features, in terms of product functionality, and we like to think that what's different is the relationship with the organization. So basically, to me, to have a relationship is basically being able to, access not just via the customer success manager, but basically be more inside of Sylius organization rather than just being a, part of the community. We manage the community as a whole, like a garden. So it's often difficult to become more personal, especially if it's a question of support on the product and so on. So this relationship, I think, is significant, and of course, it comes with everything you would expect from a commercial relationship with a vendor. So customer service and technical support via ticketing system for either the system integrator or the in-house team. So technical support services, basically.
Okay, so Pavel, also could you please describe who is the perfect Sylius, especially Sylius Plus customer? So basically talk a bit about the profile and who actually might benefit most from Sylius Plus.
Yeah, so depending on your knowledge about Sylius core, it may be not so easy to grasp the differences, because I assume we talk about Sylius Plus only. So in terms of functionality, so-called functional fit, I think it's if you deal with international sales, if you deal with inventory coming from different sources, some might be from your warehouses, some maybe drop shipping, and generally if you deal with more complex logistics and inventory system, like from international to global operations, dealing with these business units, time zones. So definitely a fashion brand that on the surface might be standard B2C fashion brand, yet another. But if you look into enterprise B2C fashion brand, it's actually much more complex system than a small to medium one. So multiple departments, definitely multi-brand setup. So we have brands that use a single Sylius Plus instance to sell both fashion and furniture, because they are part of a single group that basically aggregates these brands. And from technical point of view, like an in-house development team or a merchant that has selected, I would call it a proper system integrator, less of a marketing design agency, like an e-commerce software house, basically. It's much more suitable segment. I like to think about our customers, existing and potential, also in terms of soul fit of the two organizations, right? So definitely much more agile, with some sense of mission and long-term vision, definitely, with some community strategy. Is also interesting, and an organization that values transparency, quality, and excellence, both in technology and how we relate to each other, basically as a customer and partner and so on. So yeah, it's not just about the functional fit, I would say.
So to sum up, complex SMB or an enterprise level tech aware, with various business units.
Company who wants to be purposefully and strategically digital, definitely. So if I know we will discuss what's not a good fit, so it's I'm trying to anchor myself in what fits, but yeah, definitely we call them where Sylius fits for us, where Sylius Plus fits for a small merchant, we usually call them internal or enterprise startups. So this can be a new business line, or a spin-off, or or a separate small company set up basically as a part of a larger group. So they often have expectations kind of similar to a VC funded startup where they want to grow fast, they want to experiment and so on. So that's definitely.
Okay, thank you, Pavel. So same goes for Alessandro with Adobe Commerce.
Well, I will use the words of Pavel because I like them very much. Sorry, Pavel, for stealing you this, but I liked it. You are the perfect merchant for Magento if you have a mission and a long-term vision for growth, of course. No matter how big you are, but you have to have big dreams. You have to strive for becoming big. If you want to be the perfect fit for Magento, you have an ambition to continuously grow and expand your business. You can start small in your country with your local language and one currency, but you know that platform allows you to grow big in multi markets and with many currencies, languages, and whatever you need. And this is from the beginning. Since 2007, Magento had this feature, so it was born like that. And you are also, when I say you, I mean you merchant, you have also an aptitude to reinvest your revenues, not necessarily on the platform or only on the platform, but reinvest your revenues on what allows you to grow bigger. So marketing, human factor, sales, whatever. That's the perfect merchant fit to me. So a company that aims at becoming big, if it's not already a big company.
Okay, so either an enterprise, obviously.
Yeah, an enterprise,
very sophisticated, or an SMB with ambitions, with well-established
just to make you an
team.
example. To make an example, Mikolai, I've seen a little pharmacy in a little village in Italy becoming the third pharmacy for online revenues, and it has been recently acquired from the first one in our country, becoming the biggest pharmacy group in Italy. So they started small, they bet on Magento, and nowadays they are the biggest online pharmacy in Italy, and they are on the same platform. Of course, meanwhile, they updated the platform, they re-platformed from Magento 1 to Magento 2 and did a lot of new things, but that's the idea. You can start small, but when they started, they knew where they wanted to go. They had the vision to become big, and the platform didn't set a limit for that. That's the idea.
That's really cool example. So sticking to the topic and sticking to you, Alessandro, what is not the perfect merchant fit for Magento Commerce especially?
Yeah, on the opposite side, if you think you can have a turnkey solution at a fixed price with Magento, it won't be your platform. Because Magento, for how it is now, at least nowadays, it's a continuous project. It requires continuous maintenance, for example. We will speak about that later. So you must have an open budget to keep it up to date. And as I mentioned before, if you have the aim at growing big, you can think, okay, I have this budget, I will spend this budget and I'm set, I'm fine. No. At the same time, this is my opinion, of course, the platform or the framework in case of Sylius, it just doesn't have to be your big expense. If it's your big expense, if you're a merchant and you think that your biggest expense will be the platform or the framework, probably you are not doing a good thing, because the platform can enable you to do good things, but there are other things that will make your revenue grow. Marketing, human factor, as I mentioned before, you have to reinvest. And I can assure there are tools and services that cost much more than Magento or Sylius. Just to make an example, there are some search engines that can cost at least the same price of Magento, and we're
Mhm.
just speaking of a search engine.
Yeah.
So that's the idea. So if you think that the platform is just their main expense, you're probably not ready to invest on Magento.
Mhm. So yeah, judging by your words, probably smaller merchants that are just
Yeah.
starting with e-commerce and
Yeah,
they don't have the long-term vision.
Maybe, yeah, they're
So-
starting. They don't have. They still don't have the knowledge, the idea that e-commerce nowadays is a composition of services and skills. So it's
Mhm.
not just a platform, it's a set of tools, platform services, and human beings that work together.
Yeah.
And this, of course, has a cost because you have to orchestrate all this.
Yeah, that's a very wise statement, Alessandro.
Yeah.
Actually, we'll write it down somewhere. So Pavel, who's not the perfect merchant fit for Sylius Plus, actually?
Yeah, so to me, the purpose of this webinar is to learn about the differences. And as I listen to Alessandro and myself, I see we are very much aligned so far. But I believe we arrive at the solution differently, basically, and hopefully we show it in the next part of the webinar. So if I would be a merchant evaluating Sylius Plus, I would ask myself if is my intention to, again, grow rapidly or grow with a lot of experimentation on the business model. One of my favorite projects coming to mind is German Lilido. It was a startup set up by a couple of ex C-level guys from a couple of really big corporations, and they started as a diaper subscription for children. So it was an experiment. I think they started quite big with about 2 million revenue in the first year, but they went to 40 and now I think over 100 million euros in revenue in multiple countries. But this was the vision. This was not a small business, initiative. Basically, it was the goal was to go big, but also I think sustainable and efficient. So that's I like to think about not just the growth for the sake of growth, but with a lot of efficiency and ideally with some purpose. So I would ask myself if I want to do experiments. If I am setting up a radically digital company, when I say like radically, like 100% digitalized, like from day one, ideally, do I have aversion for change? So definitely, whenever, because enterprises, no two enterprises are the same, although you can clearly, if you work with them for a while, you can clearly see some patterns in organizations. So definitely, even if you are big and you want to be big because you have big dreams, but you have aversion to change and the organization is very monolithic, I don't think that might be a good fit for Sylius Plus, simply because we are big on decentralization and best of breed. So as Alessandro said, it's a mixture. It's a beautiful painting of many tools integrated with each other, and the platform is just one of the puzzles. Very important one, but just piece of the puzzle. So anything below 1 million GMV is risky, I would say, unless it's just first year's revenue with some capital behind it, not just for the platform. Maybe for marketplaces, I would say that for marketplace projects, it's definitely the platform is always a significant investment, but without marketing, you don't really get any traction. So you have a chicken and egg problem. So yeah, if you worry too much about the cost of the platform as your main 80-70% cost of the project, then probably you're looking in the wrong place. And basically, Sylius Plus is not a good fit if generally people around the project have a feeling like, hey, this is a standard shop, right? It's standard. It's common. It's a figured out problem. We just need to do it, and yeah, that would be some kind of yellow flag to reconsider whether it's a fit.
Okay, just to sum up the two previous questions. So both Magento and Sylius for growth, for companies that have a long-term vision, for companies that definitely have a budget, but not only on the e-commerce, but also everything else that orchestrates the whole e-commerce business. The main difference, as far as I hear, is that with Magento, you get all of the features which you either use or not, depending on the current status of your business. With Sylius, you get actually a framework, meaning actually from my experience that you customize the features to fit your current presence on the market. So this is why, yeah, I wanted to indicate the difference between framework and platform. And yeah, for anything else, there are probably better solutions on the market like Shopify, WooCommerce, Presta, which are more dedicated to to the small, maybe small medium business segment. Okay, so Pavel, also we keep with you. Now let's talk about more concrete advantages of Sylius Plus. What are they for, especially in the enterprise context? If you can provide us with some examples, that would be really awesome.
Let me unmute myself. So I like to frame this by saying that we are currently living in the so-called VUCA world. So a world full of very volatile, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of complexity, fast-going changes and ambiguity. And my take on enterprise strategy as a whole really is you need to be really fast changing. I sometimes feel sorry because even if the companies, there is no company too big to fail, and a lot of them are on the trajectory to basically disappear. Because my take, I'm thinking always about a small grocery store I have in front of my home, and it's run by a married couple for the last 20 probably plus years in the same place, same spot, and I've seen they have been struggling to avoid having credit cards and online payments and so on, and they already have an Ingenico a terminal basically, and I know they have been actively avoiding it because of the fees and we have constant customers. So I strongly believe there is really no future for non-digital companies. It will be not a question whether you are offline, online. Every single company will be digital. So to arrive at what we have been discussing, so fast growth, fast change, we at Sylius believe probably in a slightly different approach compared to Magento. So we don't believe in an all-in-one platform provided with vast number of features. We focus more on developer productivity because we understand that even if you are a very digital company, very mature in terms of digital adoption, you still need to experiment a lot, build new features, drop features, test them on different markets, and the main cost behind that is usually the development. So we focus on providing like standard technology stack. I like to think that by choosing Sylius, you not only choose e-commerce platform, you also choose a quite specific technology stack with Symfony, with Doctrine, with a lot of standard tools that make developers more easily available, and definitely much cheaper to onboard. The other point, except developer productivity and availability, I would say the performance. So we really try to make Sylius very light, despite being quite comprehensive. Not as comprehensive as Magento in terms of features, but you get multi-currency, multi-channel, multi-language, product variations, and pretty much everything you would expect from an enterprise e-commerce platform. Maybe at a bit of less CMS functionality and so on, and make it really fast in production and fast in development, I would say. And in my mind, at least, the biggest difference is in terms of Sylius being designed to integrate. So there is really, I don't see any platform either in development or from mature stacks that can really be this all-in-one platform. So you need to pick the best of breed PIM, best of breed CMS, marketing automation stuff, CRM, and so on. So Sylius is by design very easy to integrate. I could dive into how we do it. Maybe there's an opportunity later, but basically this. So built-in evolution and integration into the software stack. That would be my take.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Pavel. That was very comprehensive. Alessandro,
yeah,
same question for you now.
Yeah, speaking about enterprise segment and speaking to enterprise managers, I would say nobody will fire you for choosing Magento. That's one of the advantage. Maybe they can fire you for choosing the wrong Magento agency, but that's another problem. It happens, but that's another problem. Magento is a leader, of course, in its segment. It's in the upper right quadrant of Gartner. So that's the reason why I say nobody will fire you if you choose Magento. It dates back to 2007. It has an established ecosystem. There are plenty of hosting providers, extension providers, agency freelancers that offer their services on the platform. And from an enterprise point of view, if you are an enterprise, chances are that you use a lot of tools and services which are best of breed. And chances are that you can integrate with little or no effort with Magento because it dates back to a lot of years ago. Of course, platforms like Sylius, frameworks like Sylius are younger, so they can choose, for example, not to implement CMS functionality, because nowadays there are plenty of headless CMS that do a great job. But of course, Magento is an old system, so it dates back to years where CMS, there weren't any CMS headless platform. So they have a lot of functionality on board because they date back 2 years ago. Nowadays, you can stay slim and offer just what's needed for e-commerce and pick what you need outside. That's also probably the direction that Adobe Commerce will take in the future. So just to give you an idea, but that's the main reason. The main advantages of Magento in the enterprise segment, I think.
About the disadvantages, this is where it gets interesting actually, because
yes.
you know there are always some, so let's talk about them.
I'm not a salesperson, so I won't be harsh, but I will be realistic. As Pavel said before, Sylius is based on Symfony, which is a general purpose framework which is known by many PHP developers. On the opposite side, Magento is based on a huge framework which is proprietary. I mean, if you don't know Magento framework unless you use Magento, so you won't find PHP people that know the Magento framework without knowing Magento as a platform and as a solution. So of course, this means that Magento developers cost more money, because it's not that widespread, and mastering that framework requires time, effort. And it also takes time to master Magento functionality, because from what I was saying before, there are plenty of features that were developed over years. And if you want to use all of them, it's not easy to learn how to use all of them. There are I think hundreds of features. So it will take time. This is not an advantage from a point of view of a merchant that want to start fast. And another pain point is that Magento is not a software as a service, not yet, and will not be a software as a service anytime soon. So it requires continuous maintenance. That means money. Why? Because the stack on which Magento is based, of course, is something that evolves and is upgraded, it's deprecated, requires to be kept up to date, and that costs money, of course. It's a continuous care of the platform. We will go deeper into this later when we will speak about.
It's actually natural what we are saying, because especially if you get more features that out of the box, you still need to maintain them, which basically takes time, and time means money, especially in the enterprise context. But let's talk about the disadvantages of Sylius. So Pavel, can you say us a bit about it?
Yeah, so the first self-punch goes to the out-of-the-box features, basically. I would say you can, usually the developer productivity makes up for it, but I think still some merchants can be slightly surprised that some obvious to them things are not out of the box, right? And what I said about ease of integration means that you can integrate a lot of things, but for example, in terms of CMS, there are not that many reusable integrations. The headless market and even the headless CMS market is relatively young. So, you know, if you select a system integrator that is used to working with a stack like this, they can make it work and reap all the benefits. But we had experience with some, for example, Magento agent or shopware agencies transitioning to Sylius, and especially on, let's say, the space just between mid-market and enterprise, where yes, you accept some custom development and custom integration, but at the same time, the budget is a bit tighter, the time frame. Maybe they are not used to extending the time frame, and sometimes you can be surprised that there is no such plugin or there is no such functionality in the core. So definitely what you get out of the box is not as comprehensive as older platforms who have been in development for, you know, twice or 3 times long compared to Sylius. Definitely the differences in the vendor. I would say I don't even know how many employees Adobe has, but probably a lot more than Sylius. We would probably could be considered more of an indie vendor, especially that we stay strong in our conviction that one of the ways to preserve and grow the community in a healthy way and go really deep with our product is avoiding the typical unicorn path. So we are still self-funded. And this means, even though I think we can understand and really talk pretty much as equals with really corporate customers with tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of employees, there is some soul fit issue, I would say, because we are completely different, you know, organization from a different planet. We have over 20 people full time, but we mix with a lot of people from the community, even internally within our organization. We are self-managed. So unless, I like to think that unless there is a visionary CTO or CEO in charge of the project, then, you know, some expectations can be, some soul fit between organization issue can come into play, definitely. And probably lack of our experience, because I don't think there is anyone at Sylius who worked as a C-level, you know, enterprise person. So we can only imagine what's the experience in that environment. Yeah. And what else? No software as a service, and the cost of upgrades. Definitely, you can get a platform as a service experience, but in most recent projects, the on-premise usually is the ERP and Sylius, and a lot of projects go for, you know, only SaaS headless solutions. So that's definitely some downside. You need to account for that, for continuous upgrades, compatibility issues still.
Okay, thank you, Paweł. So let's talk about the time to market. So what's the average time of implementation for the Sylius Plus customer?
Yeah, so for a small project, for a small greenfield project, it can be as short as 1 month. I think you hold the record for the fastest implementation still, which was about 1 month. I would say a Verge for an enterprise migration, either from Magento or from custom stack or from something like Salesforce and so on, it would be around 12 months at least. We have projects that took 24 months to complete the migration, and we have projects that are still started Sylius Plus projects very early and are still migrating after 24 months. And I would say that the change here is not linear. It's usually, although we advise, migrating with strangler pattern or step by step and so on, it's not always easy. It very much depends on the organization and technical depth, especially that enterprise can accumulate some of it over the years. So yeah, it's something along these numbers.
Yeah, very case dependent, obviously. I just add from myself that 1 month obviously is possible, but it's more of a proof of concept. Yeah, probably, especially in the enterprise context.
Like a small.
Alessandro, do you have any number on top of your head that you can share with us?
Yes, I have to make a distinction between the numbers I have by my experience and the numbers that are out there in the sales page of agencies or Adobe and so forth. For my experience, for the kind of projects in which we are involved, usually we work for usually 6 months and above for new projects, and even 12 or more for re-platform, depending on the number of customization and vendors involved and pieces of the puzzle that you have to integrate. But a little fairy told me that it is possible to have Magento projects that go online in a few months. I mean, 2-3 months. Well, actually, jokes apart, it's possible, but the kind of approach you have in that case is using as much as possible Magento as is, with little customization, using maybe extensions from the marketplace without a lot of custom integrations. In that case, I think it can be possible. It's not the kind of project in which we, as an agency, are involved. So I can't speak for myself, at least not in the last years. In the very first age of Magento, I did projects in 1 month, but it dates back to a decade ago. And a decade ago, e-commerce projects were definitely other kind of projects, more simple. You had just to integrate Google Analytics and maybe a SEO suite and few feed generator, and that's it. Nowadays is an enormous puzzle of things that you have to work together. And yeah, let's remember that 6 months of calendar doesn't mean necessarily 6 months of man work. So there are also days, sometimes weeks, spent waiting for an answer from a vendor that has to give you the API access to their service, things like that. So when you have to connect a lot of dots, time is wasted sometimes. So, and that has to be counted as time to market as well.
Yeah. Speaking of man hours, at least from my experience, when it comes to Sylius, usually it starts with around 1,500 man hours of one person. So what would be the number for Magento?
Well, our average team is 5 people working for 6 months. So you can do the count more or less.
Let's make the math quickly.
Yeah.
It's around 5K. So
yeah, that's the kind of projects we are involved usually.
Yeah, in order to have an objective comparison, we would need to have exactly two same projects and estimate
of course.
which is not that easy. And
Yeah.
even with that, yeah, you know, one project might be yeah, better on advantage of Magento in terms of inbuilt features, and the other one could be on Sylius. So
yeah,
yeah.
Another important aspect to consider is that when I say that I have a team working on the project, I don't mean only just technical people, but I also have project managers or team leaders that maybe write less code but do code reviews or mentor the team. So all these people works on the project, and they of course are taken into account in the costs of the project. So that's why we have this kind of projects and costs.
One also key thing to remember, you mentioned about doing a Magento project with plugins within a few months. Same goes for Sylius also. You know, using those plugins might be dangerous in terms of the long-term vision, because they're always written in different quality, which might actually basically make the technical debt a bigger problem.
It's a trade-off. It's a trade-off, right? Always.
Yeah, so something also to keep in mind is a trade-off, exactly. So yeah, let's talk about the average lifetime of a Magento Adobe Commerce project. So obviously you are constantly working on the project, and then at some point it's a normal process that the technical debt becomes so high that it actually makes more sense to migrate instead of try to upgrade or add new features to the current existing platform. So what's the average lifetime of such Magento project from your experience?
Well, the kind of flexibility that a framework like Magento, and I think the same applies for Sylius, is not that there is lifetime boundaries per se. So the problem, or better, the lifetime is given by the fact that they are based on a technology stack that has a lifetime. Because just to make an example, Magento versions are guaranteed for 2 years. They have 2 years of support. This is going to change in the future, the change for better, but at date, it's more or less a couple of years of support, official support. And beneath Magento, we have PHP, which is from a new version to the end of the version, more or less, it's 4 years of support. From when I speak of support, I speak of security support, which is the important part of the support. So if you maintain the technology stack up to date, which doesn't happen, but if you're able to maintain technology stack up to date, you usually don't have lifetime boundaries. But what happens often, just because of the technical debt, just because of the fact that you installed an extension that requires a specific version of PHP, so if you upgrade PHP, the extension doesn't work anymore, you can expect, depending on the situation, from 2 to 4 years to be forced to do a replatform. And I speak of replatform and not upgrade, because if after 4 years, even the switching from a Magento 2 version to another Magento 2 can be a replatform, because it can be impossible to estimate how much time it would require you to upgrade the platform and all the extensions, provided they are available. Because in the meanwhile, what can happen is that an extension that I use today that's crucial for my business, maybe that vendor doesn't keep updating. So in 4 years, maybe I can't count on that extension anymore. So the more extensions and vendors you depend on, the more likely the shorter the life. But it's not because of the framework per se. It's because of the dependencies of the platform.
Of course. Pavel, so from your experience, how long does Sylius last?
Yeah, so you asked for an average, and I don't really have any data beyond our paying customers. For open source version, we do some tracking of how people upgrade and so on, but we don't have the data on the age of the projects. It's also fairly early for Sylius Plus on the market, speaking in enterprise timelines. So it's our third year on the market, and we have minimal to zero churn in the enterprise segment. We have some customers that have either they didn't renew the license, or they have basically failed, unfortunately, in the small segment. So small for us now is defined as below 10 million euros GMV. And simply, they chose this plans very early when we were kind of exploring where does it fit, and probably in the first year, and it was an overkill for their projects, basically, the amount of custom development and so on. I don't have strict data, but I have an anecdote, a cool story. One of my favorite, lifetime of Sylius stories is about Hypebeast, which is a fashion store in fashion brand in Hong Kong, and it's really crazy because when I was very even before I started any business around Sylius, these guys took very early version like 0.14, and it was 2014, so 8 years ago. They built a shop, they continued upgrading, and they are a Sylius Plus customer in production now. So 8 years of upgrading. But to be honest, they know Sylius very well, like core team level, probably. And it takes a lot of conscious effort to manage the depth, to upgrade. Like Alessandro said, I agree wholeheartedly with all my heart. Like there's plenty of things around it. If we talk about enterprise, there's really it's a systems problem, right? So there may be upgrade of the ERP going on. Maybe one key plugin is no longer maintained. I would say you can go for 10 years or close to it because this is too young. But yeah, many factors. I don't think
the conclusion
makes sense
is
to discuss this without specific use case, like specific project or company.
The conclusion for both vendors is actually have a good technical team and use dependencies wisely. And then you should be fine. Okay, so yeah, those are no easy to answer questions, but here we are to ask those questions and try to answer them in the best way possible. Okay, so yeah, the next question comes with the top 3 enterprise clients you worked with. So maybe Paul now.
Sure. So my pick for the B2C segment won't be an accident because it's a pretty cool migration from Magento. it's Brille 24, so Brille 24. It's part. It's one of the biggest online opticians, pure player. I think they maybe have a couple of showrooms. In optics. So a pretty custom and international migration from Magento with headless CMS, with custom OMS integrated with Sylius and so on. It's part of the Essilor group. So basically, most of mainstream sunglasses are part of Essilor Luxottica group. For B2B, my pick is actually our only Polish customer that I'm really proud of. It's a company from our hometown called Transfer Multisort Electronic, and it's one of the top 10 electronic parts distributors in the world. So they have a project on Sylius. And for marketplace segment, I cannot really disclose the name of the company due to the contract, of course, and the respect for their privacy. Marketplace companies, they usually do white labels, so they're picky about disclosing what did they use for the system, but it's a pretty cool agricultural marketplace from Germany. A really complex setup with Akeneo, headless CMS, with custom ERP specifically for that use case, and so on. So that would be my top 3 picks.
Okay, thank you. and marketplace is especially interesting. As it's also a growing trend in the past years. So good to hear that Sylius actually keeps up with enterprise open source based multi-vendor marketplaces. That's really a big advantage of having a framework. So Alessandro, top 3 use cases of enterprise Magento usage.
I start with one which we are very proud, because it happened just during the pandemic. I'm speaking of the Italian largest scale distribution leader. It's called eCoop. Coop is the name of the customer. eCoop is the name of the online service. They sell grocery. They have a retail, of course, retail stores, and we inherited the project from another vendor just in the middle of the pandemic, where they had a 10x growth. And we also, and we still have managed the infrastructure for them. So we had the chance to give our contribution to help people that were obliged to buy things online because due to the lockdown, they couldn't go out. And this is very interesting. And we, in this particular case, it was the first experience for us of building up a decoupled storefront in Vue and Next. So it's Magento. The backend is based on Magento, but we develop a headless storefront for this project. We also work for Bricoman, which is a multinational do-it-yourself retail store chain, part of the Adobe group. It's a French company. Again, we inherited this project from another vendor. When I said before that you can be fired for choosing the wrong Magento agency, it's true. We have a lot of projects that we inherit from others because maybe they are not the right agency for the customer. And it's our one of the biggest customers we have nowadays. We are just in the middle of a replatform from Magento 2 to Magento 2. So in this case, it's likely that we will develop in this case a storefront, a headless storefront for this customer. And as a third, I can name Italy, which is a multinational high-quality Italian food distributor. So they still have Magento 1, and they have also in the US, and they have Magento 2. And we have part of our team that joins the team of the customer and supports the team of the customer, working close with each other. So I'm happy to share these names because they are they represent good companies in their field, leaders in their field. So that's why I'm really proud of them.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure that you can read more about those cases on both Bitbull and Sylius websites. So,
yeah, we don't have a portfolio, but we don't have a portfolio. We don't share. Okay. No,
this information. Okay, so all right, but yeah, most of Sylius cases Pavel described are described on the Sylius website. But yeah, let's move forward with some of the last questions before the QA session we prepared for today. And Alessandro, let's talk about money. So what's the pricing model behind Magento Plus, Magento Commerce? So how do they charge and how much?
Yes. Disclaimer, I'm not a salesperson, so don't take the numbers that I'll give for granted, but it's more or less what I know they charge. Well, Adobe Commerce can be, you can use Adobe Commerce in two ways. You can have a hosting partner that hosts the on-premise version. In that case, you pay a license which is proportional to the online revenue that you have. So from 20 to 100 kilo dollars, more or less, per year, plus the cost of the hosting provider, which depends on the hosting provider. or you can go for the Magento Commerce Cloud, which is the platform as a service by Adobe. So you don't need any other hosting provider because Adobe gives the service for you. In that case, you can go from 40 to 200, more or less, depending on the online revenue of your business. So it's quite proportional to the money that you do online.
So revenue-based pricing, and
yeah, it's revenue-based.
Adding the implementation cost on top of that.
Yeah, of course. Oh,
how
the
much would it be?
implementation. Oh, as I said
Or at
before,
least what's the
depends.
starting point?
Well, for the project we work, if we consider the 5 people team for 6 months or 12, we can go from 200 to 300 and above, depending on the number of people and the number of days that they work. But that's more or less the investment for the kind of project that we work
where
on.
it starts.
But you can have projects that last less with less people. So let's say 50. At least 50.
Yeah, obviously, the less people, the lower the prices.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Alessandro. So same set of questions to Pavel.
Yeah, so we are currently testing the second version of our pricing. The first one used to be GMV based, but we noticed that it's not really flexible enough, and given the custom nature of the products, it isn't basically the result of the formula didn't feel right. So the current pricing model depends on the size of the merchant. We have 3: small, mid-market, and enterprise, which is respectively below 10 million and above 50 million. This is where kind of enterprise starts for us, at least. It depends also on the type of the project. So for example, we have seen that for B2B projects, we provide slightly less value out of the box compared to B2C projects. So for a purely B2B project, it's a bit lower. We also noticed that for marketplace projects, there is a bit more of our technical support and a lot more complexity for the product team. So for marketplaces, it's slightly bigger. And that's the main factors that affect the price. It can be as much as 7,500 euros per year for a small merchant with more of a national scope, up to 300,000 euros per year for a global marketplace with in-house development team. So we are talking about this kind of ranges for the license. When it comes to the implementation, I would say, again, given the open source community, we have agencies with a lot of plugins developed and shared with community, but some of them are internal. So our system integrators basically build up their capacity and experience with this as they go. So you can have a Sylius open source project on top of the open source edition for 30 to 50K. For Sylius Plus, I would say, excluding the cost of license, this starts around 100,000 euros. With the biggest implementation that we are aware of or we have been part of are north of 1 million euros. These are all either marketplaces or multi-brand setups. So a couple of multi-channel, multi-brands setup. And this excludes the cost of hosting because we don't have a cloud edition. We have hosting partners, so you can get a pretty good platform as a service experience with a couple of them. Definitely for enterprise, but this is separate, completely separate cost.
Okay, so the license pricing, pay-as-you-grow, revenue-based, implementation also depended on the number of people and project complexity, but overall starting from 100K euro for the Sylius Plus on average. Okay, Pavel, thank you. So let's talk about the last thing I would like to cover today, which is basically, in your opinion, when does it make sense to, what's the point of which you should choose Sylius Plus? and when it actually is redundant and it's better to go for the community edition, even if you are a big player.
So who is first?
Pavel, yeah, sorry.
Okay. So my answer would depend on the segment again. So for enterprise, I think the relationship with the vendor and even the customer service around the license, the technical support is really essential. So the only case where we see that enterprise customers don't really go for Sylius Plus is where they look at the features that we provide and their model and they don't check off any single Sylius Plus feature, right? But still, some are convinced enough by the idea of having a contractual relationship, an actual relationship with the vendor organization, having access to support, to consulting, coaching services on top of it, workshops, training for the in-house team, and so on. So I would say for enterprise, it's a pretty obvious choice for practical, psychological, functional reasons, really. For mid-market, it depends on how big is the dream, I would say, and which system integrator you choose. Because for a mid-market fashion company, I think developing returns management and multi-source inventory and some loyalty features from scratch will be always more expensive than buying the features from us, especially that we cover the maintenance, right? So we maintain Sylius Plus for the long term, and this is definitely cheaper than paying constantly for upgrades and so on. For small companies, I would say only if you are raising funds, like venture capital, or if you are either like an internal merchant of a big organization, a spin-off, internal startup, whatever you call it. But basically, there is some impactful and ambitious organization behind it, basically. For small experiments, really, WooCommerce, Shopify, probably Shopware for some will be definitely a safer choice. And when you outgrow them, talk to Sylius, talk to Magento, basically.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit more?
Yeah, it's not that different from what Pavel said. In essence, if your revenue mostly depends on the online sales done with the platform, just the support would justify the investment. Because we have to remember that in open source doesn't mean free. And when things go wrong, because they go, not because of Magento or Sylius, but because of software, you don't have anyone to blame if you don't pay the support to someone. So if you don't want to risk your business, just the support is worth. Of course, the more features you use from the enterprise license, the more the return on investment you have. So just like Pavel said, the opposite, when it's not worth to go for the enterprise license. If none of the features of the enterprise you think to use, or if you can rely on an internal team that gives support, or on a very tight partner, reliable partner, or again, if you do a lot of customization, you need to do a lot of customization so that the Adobe support could be compromised, because if you screw up the platform and then you have a problem, Adobe will not necessarily be able to help you if what you have is no Magento, is no more Magento, is something that you have customized. So if you need a lot of customization and you can count on the support of your team, you probably could avoid paying the license because it won't give that advantage. In other cases, if you lose money, if something goes wrong and you lose money, I would suggest going with the paid version.
Yeah, just as an insurance and having all the extra features on top of that.
Yeah, of course, and you get a lot of extra features. I've seen merchants using them, all of them, none of them, some of them. Depends on of course on the merchant.
Okay, guys. So that were all the questions I had for you today. Now is the time for the QA session. So if anyone has any question that feels like addressing, now is the time to post it on the chat. And if there are not many, because I can see that actually far less people joined us, probably because of the rescheduling date problem. Yeah, but there's a question. How many % of Magento and Sylius users are paying for the commercial versions versus the open source? Who would like to go first? Because yeah, that's an interesting statistics indeed.
I can take this one. There seems to be this rule of open source universe called 1%, and really, I remember when sketching out some business model for Sylius Plus and so on, I did a bit of research, and at least in our segment of platforms, it was approximately like that Magento enterprise customers was, I don't know if that's true right now, but back then it was around 1% of all user base was using the commercial version, and from our best estimates, it's around 2 to 3% of the total user base that's using the commercial edition, at least for us.
Obviously, it's much easier for you, Pavel, to estimate it because you are representing the vendor itself. It might be a bit harder for Alessandro.
Yeah, it's harder. I think I've seen some numbers in the past regarding this data, but I'm not able. I think that more or less the numbers that Pavel gave all are the same for the Magento ecosystem. But I can't guarantee. Anyway, just a little percentile of Magento is the Adobe eCommerce, the enterprise license, of course. But yeah, it's open source. It's free, as I told you before. Yeah, it's easy for the open source to spread if you don't have to pay a license. Yeah, but this is not a number I can give you for this.
I'm trying to internally, I'm trying to shift our focus into the total GMV, let's say, because for example, if we talk about mid-market to enterprise platforms, and I think Sylius kind of joined a lot more mature market, and we could make a conscious decision to go mid-market and enterprise early compared to Magento. But looking at the numbers, I don't expect with Sylius we will ever reach like 300,000 websites. It's not the point. It's not the point. I think WooCommerce, Shopify, Shopware are doing great job in supporting very early stage entrepreneurs or turning regular jobs into entrepreneurs and let them focus on that, and we hope to focus on like a more impactful scale basically.
But you know what, Pavel? Even Magento, when they started, they were just a little web agency. So keep the finger crossed. Don't. Maybe, who knows? You are the next Magento platform. You don't have necessary limits.
Yeah, no, it's not about the limit. I'm just talking purely in the number of users, like number of individual shops. I'm much more interested in having 100 very impactful, purposeful, global merchants or companies. I think sometime in the future this distinction between online merchant and business will dissolve. It will be just you do business, you are digital, you are online, and you're using some kind of e-commerce platform. So
especially talking about the technology, Sylius is like this e-commerce layer on top of Symfony, which makes it a very bit different in terms of technology wise. There's many more web applications or even e-commerce is based on Symfony, whereas Magento is a whole product. So
it's a framework, not a CMS. I would frame it
definitely.
Like so e-commerce framework, not an e-commerce CMS.
Yeah. So speaking of that, yeah, it's a bit different when it comes to talking about numbers. Okay, the next question is that Adobe actually pushes Adobe Commerce very strongly into microservices architecture, software as a service. For example, all new features delivered by Adobe will be only available as software as a service. And the question is Sylius moving to the same direction?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things here. One is hosting. So we are definitely nowhere near, or I don't see in our vision a SaaS only solution at this point, especially that we just launched a hosting program, hosting partner program, which I believe it fills some voids that was created when Magento Cloud was introduced, because the hosting program ended. And we have a couple of hosting partners now in France and many others in the pipeline. So I like to think that at some point we will have an official platform as a service coming from Sylius, either in some kind of deep partnership with other company, or we build it in house. Simply because we know the platform best, and I think effectively as we grow also as an organization, we can provide the best service, but no plans to make it SaaS only. Maybe there will be some, especially as our headless implementation matures. I can imagine having a headless SaaS edition, which will be, but it's very different to have a headless SaaS solution compared to a SaaS solution per se, like a Buffer or Monday or Trello or whatever, right? And microservices, the second point. No, we make a distinction between microservices and self-contained systems, and we are definitely more in the wave of self-contained systems. I believe microservices, despite all the hype, can be an overkill for many, if not most, enterprises. It's like often it's like trying to skip a stage in growth and development. It's tempting because everyone wants to grow, more revenue, more everything, but to arrive at this level of decentralization within an organization with microservices, both technology and human systems, you need to grow up into it. You cannot skip the step of going from monolith to best of breed, self-contained systems, highly integrated, and then these microservices can start popping up. And I think we have plenty of work to be done in this space of helping merchants go from monolith to these self-contained systems, which are a bit bigger than microservices. So maybe somewhere in the future it will be interesting for us, but right now, no. I don't think we realistically have any customer who could be described as a microservices setup. They have some microservices setup, but if we talk about Amazon, Zalando, Alibaba level of granularity and really microservices, and the sheer number of engineers, I mean, you cannot talk about microservices if you have 10 or even 20 internal engineers, maybe 20. You could start talking about some, but it's not enough. It's a couple of systems at best.
Or yeah, focusing on the technical niche, it actually makes sense for now to stick to the on-premise model, I guess, in terms of the software as a service aspect of the question. Okay, I haven't seen any other questions, so I feel like now it's the good time to finish the webinar. So just to let everyone know, we are going to share it on YouTube sometime near, and we are also going to post it with quite an extensive blog post we prepared comparing more technical indicators of each vendor. So guys, thank you for joining me in the discussion. I think that there were many details covered, and yeah, I really keep my fingers crossed for it to be a value added to the community. And yeah, what can I say more? See you in the community on Slack. I feel like you can also reach out both Alessandro and Pavel over email or on appropriate Slack channel, or even LinkedIn if you wish. So thank you very much, guys, and yeah, hope to talk to you somewhere time soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Have a great day, folks.